Hello, I am Strat, and I am the developer of the economy system. Um, I we tr- I made with help from Vanadium a video yesterday, um, which wasn't oh no not yesterday, Thursday, wasn't it? Um, which was a little unstructured, and also I added a bunch of things which made the whole process of um adding buildings and such to countries order of magnitude easier. So, this video is going to be about basically everything covered there, but a little bit more. So, tech, how workforce factors into this, a bit of resources, what buildings are, what all that, and then how you add buildings to basically get everything up and running for your country setup, and how to add that to your history files as well, so that it will load into the game. When you load into the game, that it will be there, as well as a few additional notes. So, first thing I want to start off with is something very important: technology. Technology, obviously, in this area is changing a lot, but in the scope of here, it matters a lot for your buildings. As you can see here, just like hovering over this, you see there's a bunch of modifiers for these for buildings, which increases the effectiveness of these buildings. So either it reduces the building input cost, increases the throughput, so it increases both the input cost and the output, or just increases the output. So the technologies are very important, especially because how productive your buildings are determines how wealthy your country is. So having these techs makes your country a lot wealthier. And I am operating the economy system operates off the assumption that you have roughly techs in line with where you should be. So like 1857, Prussia should have 1857 tech. Thereabouts. So when you're first doing your country, please check your industry techs. The reason a lot of countries don't have them properly set. Some countries will be further behind, so like Russia, for example, or China, or Latin America, might not necessarily have the most advanced technology, but just make sure that they have stuff like early mass transit and all that. Of course, depending on the country, China probably won't have that, but just make sure you go through the techs. So some very important techs are these ones which give you new production methods. So you see where it says enable industrialized and then yada yada yada. That enables new production methods, and these are basically just giant leaps in productivity and types of production. So you really want to have up-to-date production methods researched.
If accurate.
If accurate, yes. So going through some important techs. So you have early mass transit and roadworks, which will give you infrastructure tech, which I'll explain why that's important later, as well as ports and naval industry. Steam locomotives, if you have steam locomotive 1, if your country has railways, it should have this tech. You have over here, mini factories and coreless steam engine, which will give you better urban buildings, or primarily industries, and interchangeable parts and machine tools, which will reduce the goods input cost of your factories, which is very important because that makes them more profitable. And of course, engines. In process engineering, fuel refining is probably something every European country should have. I mean, just look at the modifiers there. As well as cast iron industrialization and wrought iron gives you better production methods for your mines, while dry pudding and industrial brass forms gives you better industrial goods factories. And there's nothing. These texts give you services building output and such modifiers, but there's nothing critical in here. Biochemistry. So there is. You definitely want farming techs. Farming techs are extremely important because a good chunk of your economy is going to be agriculture, especially for the more rural countries. So stuff like fertilizer, pre-industrial farms, mechanized farming. So pre-industrial farms, probably every European country should have them. Threshing machines if you want industrialized agriculture. By the way, lumber mills is also here. So this is both Prussia and US have these starting tags. So these are ahead of time. Then you have socioeconomics. Okay, these two tags are extremely important. Now it might not seem like a lot, but -1% goods input cost for all your buildings is a lot. So having these two tags is really important. Not only that, industrial society and public works gives you better services buildings. So that's tax. So you want to make sure before you start on anything to get your tax situation sorted. So let's actually go down to the states. So starting off with, you have population. About 35% of the population will be, well, actually exactly 35% for will be workers. This is your workforce. This is the population that actually goes to be employed in the buildings. This number here is the amount of workers employed in non-subsistence farm buildings. And this is the available workforce that are either unemployed or in subsistence farm buildings. You generally want to keep the number of jobs under the workforce amount, because otherwise you'll start running into an issue where your industries will not start with 100% employment. Not to mention this is the 1850s, so you probably should have some subsistence farmers around. So like if I go to Ohio, you'll see there's 176,000 subsistence farmers in Ohio. So, it depends on the state and it depends on the development. So like Long Island has barely anyone unemployed or in subsistence farm. So it depends on the state. But generally, poorer countries should definitely have more subsistence farmers. So Russia should be like 90% subsistence farmers or something. Next up, resources. So these are your resources. These are very important. If I hover over one, you can see there's a tooltip, very helpful tooltip to tell you the price, the base price, and the relative price. All the stuff below that is sort of important, but sort of not. Now the stuff at the bottom, very bottom, national market, tells you the production, supply, and demand of this resource in your country. That can be helpful if you're like, okay, but this produces 300, so if you really want to get down to the numbers. But really, the important thing there is relative price. If it's above base price, then you generally want to consider adding buildings to there, unless you're purposely making it high. So if you're making it high, then so countries will import goods if their food price, or if their source price is above the global rate. That's slightly different than the base price, but I'll explain that later.
Basically, it's the assumption if you have any goods, for example, in this case, food, where this country lacks the production and thus has to produce more, needs to import in excess food. So, like, say, for example, I don't
Prussia,
know, Russia.
Prussia, Prussia imported food from the U.S. So
Yeah,
generally, Prussia should have
expensive
a
food.
higher, yeah, more expensive food than base price, most likely. You can just operate off of base price.
But like for example, Russia, which like everyone's a farmer, so there's no issue.
Yeah, or the U.S., which has extremely fertile land and thus produces a lot of food um, and exports it. Same thing goes for every resource. So you can see here is you have base price, relative price. So the relative price is there just to help you sort of decipher. All right, so services is really expensive. So just a note: the maximum increase over base price is 100%, and the maximum decrease is minus 75%. So consumer goods, which is 4, base price of 4, can be at minimum 1 and at maximum 8. Just so like services here is at its maximum price. Do note that some of these are demanded by POPs, so food, consumer goods, luxury goods, services. So if you add buildings, that will make them wealthier because, well, you can see here the productivity of military industry is 10 times that of subsistence farms, almost. Therefore, they'll be earning more money, which means they'll be spending more money on resources, on goods. So that will increase demand. So as you're filling out your country, you may notice that prices start to increase a little. That is often due to your workers or to buildings, but I'll get to that right now. There's quite a few different building types. First important one to cover is the infrastructure building. So that's railways, infrastructure, not be confusing with the category, ports and airports. Don't worry about airports. They're, 1900s. So starting with railways. Railways offer a lot of something called industrial capacity. Um, infrastructure offers a little bit, but a lot less than railways. So industrial capacity basically caps the amount of buildings that can be in a state. And if it's over that capacity, then you will have penalties applied. Now, this is not implemented yet, so you can right now build over your industrial capacity, and you can right now, or there is no penalty applied, but in the future there will be.
Or if you're
So,
watching this in the future, it could already have happened.
yes, indeed. Um, then you have ports. So ports primarily provide shipping capacity. Shipping capacity is used for trade, which is rather important if you're, trying to get resources that you're lacking, or exporting resources that you have an excess of. I'll cover trade at the end of this. Just a little blurb as to how trade works. Railways and infrastructure provide a small amount of shipping capacity, but ports provide the vast majority. Naval industries also provide some shipping capacity. Speaking of naval industries, so the three basic factory types that you're all aware of: military, civilian, and naval dockyards, already appear across the map. They're set by whatever is set in the history file, so you don't have to worry about these. We will get to reworking these later so that, you'll have a lot less civilian industries and those will be converted into normal factories, but you can ignore these for now and work around them. as to the other buildings, so you have consumer goods factory, you have luxury goods, you have industrial goods, you have services, you have power plant, but that you don't have to be concerned about that because nothing demands electricity right now. You have subsistence farms, which are automatically generated. You don't have to worry about these, and are basically just there to suck up all the unemployed people. You have commercial farms, which produce food. You have lumber mills, which produce raw materials and energy. You have metals mines, which produce raw materials. You have coal mines, which produce energy materials. By the way, energy materials are like coal, oil, that sort of stuff. Oil wells, which are not on the map currently, at least anywhere. I think Baku might start with one. That produces energy materials. You have valuables extractors, which I think are over here, which produce straight up money. Like that just literally prints money. Then you have plantations. So you have material plantations, food plantations. Yep, food plantations and luxuries plantations. That's all your building types. They're all listed right here. So if you're ever confused, you can just look here. So it's under economy, states, setup, rework, and these are all the variables you'll be using. I'm going to be covering this a little bit. So just like hide this part and come down here. But that's all the buildings. So when you're adding buildings, keep in mind they do have inputs costs. So if you're adding, say, industrial goods factories, then you can see there it will increase the demand for industrial goods, raw materials, and energy materials. So do keep in mind. Services buildings, consumer goods and luxury goods, and as well as industrial goods. But I think almost every single building requires industrial goods. So just be aware of that. You will have a lot of industrial goods factories. Also be aware that if you have that, basically most buildings require raw materials, energy materials, and or industrial goods. So having these be high prices and the production, what the building is producing, be a low price will make the building very unproductive or even negatively unproductive, which means that it costs more to actually produce the stuff that it's making. So you generally would kind of want to avoid that. So now I've talked about buildings and resources and workers. How in the world do you put buildings down? So the previous method took fucking forever because it involved you reloading the game like a million times. So I developed this new thing over the course of the last day or so called auto build. So if you've ever used IC in the game, instant construction, then you'll know you can just instantly build buildings. Well, this is basically the same thing. Auto build will allow you to add new buildings. Ignore the icons. Work in progress. To the states that you control. So not fully control. I might actually have to change that for Qing because that's going to pose a problem for vanadium. So you can add buildings to states you control, and it will instantly complete them. So if I add, say, so this is Westphalia. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to add infrastructure. So instantly add infrastructure, and it will automatically adjust everything as if you just loaded up the game. So all your buildings will have 100% employees, and your subsistence farm will have everyone else. So I can add a railway, and you see, this is an industrial capacity. So the cap has gone up to 18. So then I'm like, okay, I want Industrial goods factory. That's something that was probably built here. Although, maybe let's do services right now. So services. There's Prussia is lacking a few services. There's just a few. So you've got these new buildings here. They're all size 1 though. So how in the world do you increase and decrease the building sizes? So just click. So if you have auto build enabled, and make sure you have auto build enabled, otherwise it will start construction the normal way, and you'll be locked out of changing it. So with auto build enabled, click, and it will increase the size, and it will again redistribute everything. So do this until you have a size you want. Left click to increase, right click to decrease. And you can see these numbers are changing. So I can just start adding more and more. Be like, okay, let me add a new, that shouldn't be here. I know why that's there. I need to fix that. I don't think that might do something. So let's put in I think there was coal here. So let's put in coal. Some coal. Why are you unproductive? What? So if if this number is red, then that means it's unprofitable. So energy and why is it unproductive or unprofitable? Excuse me. I don't understand. Okay. Whatever. So then you just basically go through and you I don't know why it's just okay. Whatever. You can just go through and add what you need. So then that's what you do. So let's say I'm like, okay, I feel good with this. So then the next thing you need to do, oh, well, hold on. There we go. The next thing you need to do is go into history. So history files and find the state. Find the states that you just changed. So 57 for Westphalia. Hold on. State 57. So, how do you actually get this to stick in the history files? Because right now, if I reloaded the game, all these buildings would disappear. So, what you do is that you set variable, and you want to put this in the history section and outside of buildings. Do not put it inside buildings. This is where the paradox buildings go. This is not normal buildings. And then you basically pick the one here, which basically correlates with what you want put there. So building infrastructure size. So I have one infrastructure here. So I'm going to have set the building infrastructure size variable to 1. And that will, so when I reload the game, the infrastructure in this state, there'll be a size 1 infrastructure building in this state. And then you continue doing that for the rest of these. Let me just, so railway, that was 4. Then you have, there's no ports here. Consumer goods factory, that's 3. Luxury goods factory, that was 2. Industrial goods, that was 4. Services, that was 6. Coal mine. No, that's the wrong variable. There you go. Make sure you don't grab the production method ones. You can ignore these. The buildings should automatically default to the latest available production method. And that was 4. So, now that these are here, if I reload the game, they should be here. I'm not going to do that because that would take forever. But that's basically how you set up your country. And so you just do this state by state. putting in the variables into the history section here until you've got your entire country sorted. So I'm not going to do the rest of Prussia right now because that'd take a while. And I don't want this video to stretch on for 40 minutes. So, additional notes. First off, markets. If you go into map modes, you'll notice there's a market map mode. I have not implemented markets yet, but I do plan on doing that. Basically, it will combine the markets of you and your puppets of puppets and a few other things. So like Zollivan. There you go. Zolvarine. There will be one market for that, pretty much, so that these guys will share. The Germans will share a market, so that the national market here will include every state, all the buildings in here, the production, all that. So in terms of trade, trade is done between markets. So say between the Prussian market and the American market. This is the amount that you can trade is limited by your shipping capacity, which is why that's important. Important to get ports in because they provide the most shipping capacity, and or railways because they also provide some. And using that, you can do trade. So as you can see, I can import quite a bit more now because I put some railways down. So, and these will, this is export more, import more. Shift and control will increase the amount that this is changed by. So, that's basically how you set up a country. All the buildings. I don't think I have much more to add. Vanadium, is there anything you
I
think I
can't
missed?
think of anything, so we can tack it on if we remember.
All right. Well, that's it.
Thank you for watching.
Enjoy building up your country.